Hey, this is Michael Maize. You're listening to my podcast with Elaine Goodman at gogoodman.com.au.
When you were studying fine arts and dance back in Milwaukee, was your aim film and TV?
Not at all. It's something that basically evolved through time. I started at a high school that had a focus on fine arts, but I was still really focused on math and science. And I just was kind of dabbling in theater and got into high school musicals. And then when I went to university, which was in Illinois, which is near, it was at a university near Chicago, I actually started there with a pre-med focus as well. And I was in an honors program where you could take, you didn't have to take any of the general education classes. And so I ended up double majoring in pre-med and musical theater. And my focus with musical theater was strictly stage. And I was going to move to New York immediately after graduating. I got a job at a theater in California for the summer after graduation, and I thought I should just give Los Angeles a try for a couple of months before going out to New York. And those couple of months proved to be very good, and I surprisingly was into Los Angeles. Never really thought I would be that into it, and I booked a commercial right away. I started getting a great response there. I decided it would be great to take some film and TV classes, which is definitely a very different style. I actually struggled with it at the time because being on stage was so presentational, and it was something that was in my blood at that time. And so I took some classes for a good year or two, and then that really started to transfer over into some of the bookings that I had. I did a guest star on the Jamie Foxx show and some other initial, I think I was on the Power Rangers right at the beginning. And so those classes really helped me do that. And I've always just stayed in class ever since. I think class is a great way to just keep the tools sharp and just work out the logistics of what I'm working on at the time. But I had to definitely take some additional classes when I got to LA.
Back in the 90s when I grew up, Hollywood was full of comedy, classic cartoons, and great relatable superheroes. And that's what was aimed at me anyway. What did you like about Hollywood when you moved there in the 90s?
Just scanning back. To be honest, Hollywood at the time for me was really just a coming of age of exploring myself as an artist and exploring this new medium of film work. I also was really into a lot of the superhero and comic strip movies growing up. I was a huge fan of the original Batman trilogy, and I loved the first 4 Superman movies, and I even remember reenacting them with my brothers and cousins in the backyard. And so I was a huge fan of film and TV growing up.
Your first recurring role was on Power Rangers in Space as the human form of the Black Psycho Ranger, and I know exactly who this is because I googled you and I remember the character, but you had this blonde curly mullet thing too. Was that your choice?
Yes, it was definitely a choice at the time. When I moved to LA initially, I think it was a much smaller version of curly wild hair, and then as it continued to grow, I got a larger and larger response from the things I was being cast in, and it was definitely a part of my look and my type at the time. But I remember it being brought up by casting directors and directors, this wild mane of curls that was definitely my thing and partially my signature look. So I got cast as an orderly in a psychotic ward in the Jamie Foxx show, and then after that I got the Power Rangers in Space. And I know from talking to the director that it was definitely part of that casting decision. So since it was working for me and it was definitely part of the attention I was getting, I kept it and was using it to my benefit. think it was many different colors. It was like natural at one time, and then in Power Rangers it was blonder, and then for a Rockstar role it was black with like blue highlights, which was popular in the late 90s, and so it was definitely a fun thing to work with.
You also did the voice for the Black Psycho Ranger. Did you become a fan of the show?
I did. I especially really liked that season in particular. I thought that doing the 80-yard voiceover work was super fun. I had never done it before, and they had cast me as the human version, but then there were the 6 or 7 episodes where I had to do the voice, and it was super cool. I had to, if you remember, just kind of do a definite like villain gravelly voice, and then he turns into that large monster version of himself. And I have a memory of them just, wanting something from me, and I was like, I don't know how to do a crazy monster voice. And I was like, yes, you just try something. And it felt like being 8 years old, and I was just making up some crazy, weird monster voice with my brothers, and it worked, and I loved it.
Power Rangers wasn't as big then as it was a few years earlier. It was making a bit of a comeback. That season in particular, they made a lot deeper to try and get the fans back on board. Did this role have a good or bad effect on you getting other roles, or was it just another role? Because some Power Ranger actors went on and they couldn't really break into any other acting roles because they were typecast. Did you struggle from that?
I didn't. I think because I was a recurring role as opposed to a regular, it was isolated in some of the other work that I had gotten. I combined with, I had done the Jamie Foxx show, as I had mentioned, and I was in this movie called More Dogs Than Bones, and both of those were more adult themed and definitely different than the genre of Power Rangers, so it didn't really hinder any of the work I got, and I don't really also think it necessarily benefited anything there from the future, because I didn't really work on any other children's shows or children's focused shows or shows of that manner to that point.
And in 2012, you went to Power MorphCon, which is the big Power Rangers convention, which is I think is every second year in Pasadena, if I'm correct. Did people recognize you?
Yeah, for sure. Especially because, as you said, they're starting like in 2010. There was a big resurgence of the Power Rangers, and they put it onto Netflix, and they put Power Rangers in Space on Netflix, and so there had been people that wrote me through my website beforehand just to make sure I was there, and there were definitely people that had posted pictures of me and remembered me, and there were some other Psycho Rangers there as well, and other people from that season. So it was fun to get some shots with them. But there's definitely some images online with some of the fans and things from that convention. That was a lot of fun.
Then you went on to do a lot of one-off appearances on shows like The Blacklist, The Mentalist, Without a Trace, CSI New York, ER, and heaps of others, and this is a common thing for most actors starting out. How did you feel about jumping from show to show and only getting to spend a week on each set?
I think that it's always a challenge to jump into a family that's already existing of the regulars that are on a show. Many times you're coming in for one day and you have to do 2 scenes and jump into this energy and atmosphere very quickly. I think that I always researched it, the show that I was about to do, a lot, and put a lot of time into seeing what the tone and energy of that show was, even before I did the audition. And I think that really helps when you get onto set. And I always just had to remain very focused and professional and be in my own world and come into that scene and just do the work. And I was always focused on doing that work. I think it's been fun to do some more of the recurring roles where you get to see some of the regulars and interact and allow that character to grow. But the one-offs are just working for 1 week. they're challenging, but they're also exciting because you only have that moment in time to be the best that you can be and put it out there. So they've always been great experiences across the board.
And you've also appeared in around 20 movies. What's the difference for you between a movie like National Treasure, which has $100 million plus budget and makes hundreds of millions of dollars in profit, and a movie that has a budget of $1 million or less? Because you've done a few of each. So what's the difference between them?
I think there's a multitude of differences ranging from the amount you're making as an actor, to your experience on set, to the way you're being comforted as an actor with some of the perks. In general, I really love being an actor, and I always bring that artistry, quote unquote, to my work and really engage in what's happening, and that's what's most important to me. And I think that always remains constant through the films that I've done. National Treasure was an amazing experience, especially at the time, which was before the writer's strike of 2009. And so National Treasure, I got that right before the writer's strike. And so there was still a plentitude of these large budget films being done. And so that combined with it being Walt Disney, they basically signed me on for the whole film. And I traveled to 5 different cities, from London to New York to D.C. To South Dakota, where Mount Rushmore is, and they definitely pocketed that time with like 2 to 3 week stays, even if I was just there for 2 days, staying in great hotels. And it was just a really great experience where I got to connect with a lot of the actors in the film as we had off time, and I loved that film overall as an actor, just to be treated so greatly and respected a lot. So unfortunately, after that, you always compare that to it. There's been some great experiences from that, but when you're doing a film that's an indie for like 200,000, you just really have to let all that go and just focus on the work at hand.
Can you tell me about Happy, which is a new TV show where I think you've got a recurring role, and it's about an injured hitman who befriends a horse?
Yes. Happy is based on a graphic novel with the same name, Happy. It was a New York Times bestseller, and the lead character, Nick Sachs, played by Christopher Maloney, he's an ex-cop turned hitman, and on one of his hits, when he's the most down and out he possibly could be, he gets killed and resuscitated, and he awakens to this blue animated horse who is incessantly positive and trying to get him to save this little girl he's the imaginary friend for this girl. And so this little horse goes along for the ride on all these different hits that he's trying to do throughout the show. And it's really an amazing show. The first second I read the script, I was completely drawn into it. It's colorful, it's violent, it's funny, it's crazy. It's definitely a heightened story from a graphic novel. My character is called The Deke, and him and Nick Sachs have a past where Nick actually owes money to the Deke, and he comes to him try and get that money back at my poker table. And so I'm scattered throughout the season with him, and we have a lot of great interaction and action scenes, and some great stuff happens.
And where can people watch it? Is it a Netflix show, or is it going to be on cable in America, or?
It's going to be on cable on the network called Sci-Fi, which is SYFY, and it premieres December 6th. And I know that Sci-Fi is online as well, and you'll be able to watch the Sci-Fi website.
I read that apart from acting, you spread your time between a bunch of hobbies and charities, Is it hard to spread your time evenly amongst them all? And some of the charities you support are Boxer Rescue Los Angeles, Spay Neuter Project Los Angeles, Shelter Box, and Austin Pets Alive, as well as the Trevor Project, APLA, and Broadway Cares. How do you spread your time amongst them all? And I read you also have a lot of hobbies as well.
I think it's all about time management and making the time. I think as busy as we all are, we can always make the time for what we put high on that priority list. I feel like as an actor, I have a lot of opportunity to give back, and I feel that I have found a lot of organizations that really give back to things that call out to me, and especially in this current political world that we have where the extremes are very high and things are being brought to the surface. I think there are a lot of people out there like within the Trevor Project, which is an LGBTQ organization that speaks to teenagers that are thinking about suicide. That's something in particular that's perhaps brought to the surface at this time and era. I think it's a really great opportunity to give back and give my words and my thoughts and my hopes for people out there and do what I can.
And finally, this is something that interests me as well. You're an openly gay actor, and that's very public. Is being openly gay to the public something that's important? Has it affected your career positively or negatively? And is your sexuality like anybody's business? Is it something that needs to be known in Hollywood, or is it something that it can be kept private if you're in the public eye, if you want to keep it private?
I feel that it is something that I don't need to boast about and I don't need to hide. I feel like it's something that can help a lot of people out there who are questioning or who haven't come to terms with their sexuality in the way that I have at this stage in my life. And so I want to be there as a role model for the people that are confused or beyond confused and, dealing with it in a challenging sort of way. Because I don't really boast or necessarily bring it into my work, because I always choose to focus on my work, and usually the roles that I'm being cast in are strong character types that require that work or that focus or really delving into the themes of the project at hand. I think that's what it's always about and what I always come back to. And that's really where I try and stay with it. I don't want to hide it, and I don't need to, it's not something I always need to be talking about or it needs to be part of every conversation or every project that I'm doing by any means, but I'm willing to go there.
And finally, where can people find you?
Right now on IMDb, I have a link there to my resume and photos, and I also have my current demo reel on YouTube and Vimeo. And the next thing that I'm going to be in is Happy, which is, as we said, premiering on December 6th on Sci-Fi, and then I'll be in a new series next year called You, Y-O-U, which is going to be on Lifetime.
And what's that about?
That is it's a new show for Lifetime, and it's a psychological thriller based on a book, and it's a 21st century love story that kind of asks the question, what would you do for love? And the answer really is anything in the end. It's starring Penn Badgley. He is in Gossip Girl and EVA. And I play a sheriff who interacts throughout the season with his character.
Cool. And what about social media? Are you big on social media? Do you do a lot of it?
I am, yeah. I'm on Twitter, which is just at Michael Maize. I'm on Facebook, which is the same, and I'm also on Instagram, which is also at Michael Maize. Everything is just at Michael Maize.
Perfect. Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure. Good luck for Happy and for you. That you're kind of going towards the one word titles, but that's cool. It's easy to remember. And yeah, have a good Christmas, winter, and good luck for next year.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was great chatting.